All right, this is Steve Lane with the Freedom Report, and I have the distinct pleasure of being joined by, I'm sorry, Mr. Tony Brown.
Yes,
I'm a
sir.
little nervous, Mr. Brown.
That's all right.
And he's got a new book out called Empower the People, which I have here, and I just wanted to ask you a few questions.
Well, the Illuminati its original name was the Order of the Illuminati, or the Order of the Devil, and they were people who were aristocrats, intellectuals, people who did not believe in God, who believed in rationalism, as it was called in Europe, in the belief that you could be illuminated, as in Illuminati, as was Lucifer, which is why he was thrown out of heaven, and that pious religious belief is corny, based on superstition, and that each person can, if they follow the dictates of the devil, which they call Baphomet, or Lucifer, or we call Satan, that you can become God. And there's no need for a God. Now, that is a statement of fact. It was organized by Adam Weishaupt in Ingolstadt University in Bavaria, Germany. It succeeded down through the years. And
About what time frame was that?
It was organized in 1776. May the 1st, which is where May Day comes from. And people think May Day is a celebration of communism. It isn't a celebration of the Illuminati. Communism is a manufactured, phony political concept of the Illuminati. So the Illuminati plays on both sides. But this was in 1776. As a matter of fact, on the American dollar, when you see "In God We Trust," pious Christians, Jews, and Muslims believe it means the Creator God, but it really refers to their God, because they have the seal of the Illuminati on the dollar bill. As a matter of fact, at the base of the pyramid on the seal, if you take the 9 Roman numerals, split them into 3 each,
666.
add up the bottom, you get 666. So they're everywhere. But it should not surprise anybody, although it does, because people don't think anyone is this mean to do this. But there are people who believe in God, as you and I do. There are people who believe in goodness, as you and I do. But there are people who believe that there is no God, that there is a devil, who believe in evil. And in my book, I simply document that. And that's simply a part of a generational, passed along religion that has remained underground for very obvious reasons. And they focus on... Yes, they focus on the accumulation of wealth, and their religion is this Illuminism.
Since you're short on time, I'll get straight to my next question about the Federal Reserve. That's the battle that's being waged, I think, or at least a portion of it on the economic front. You mentioned in the town hall meeting earlier about formation of your own money system and it being backed by gold. Now, I know the significance of this, and I know the significance of the Federal Reserve and its collection branch, the IRS. Can you explain to our audience a little bit about what you have found about that and document very well?
I can refer them to a recent event. Former President George Bush was interviewed by David Frost in the last few months. And he blamed Alan Greenspan for his loss of the election in 1996.
Because he inflated the money supply.
Well, I'm saying that the chairman of the Federal Reserve can elect or unelect anyone running for president. Now, I'm not saying that Mr. Greenspan did that. I have no evidence that he did. But as I say in my book, had he wanted to defeat Bill Clinton, he could have done that. And the Federal Reserve is not a part of the federal government. The Federal Reserve is plank 2 of the Communist Manifesto, written by Karl Marx and Illuminati, financed by crony capitalists from Wall Street, to put a left wing on their movement so they could have both ends of it, political spectrum, and that the second plank in the Communist Manifesto is the income tax, which is really, IRS is really the collection agency of the Federal Reserve. So in effect, you have 2 major communist institutions parading as capitalist institutions, and in effect, we don't really have capitalism or communism. We have a confluence of Illuminism. So the Federal Reserve really, and one of the most striking examples is that we now have a concept the Federal Reserve uses called NAIRU, the natural rate of natural unemployment, natural rate of unemployment, and NAIR use the acronym. And it's based on the fact that we need a minimum of 6% unemployment to restrain inflation. That means that if too many people work, we have an inflated economy. Goods and services cost too much, when in effect, inflation can and is only caused by a Federal Reserve that inflates the amount of currency in circulation, which debases the amount of dollars already in circulation. So it creates inflation, and it says in order to fight inflation, we must keep a minimum of 6% of all Americans unemployed, which translates into about 25 to 30% of blacks and Hispanics, and the American people applaud it and give this man great awards for controlling inflation.
The Federal Reserve is printing money so fast that the Crane Paper Company, who makes the paper for our Federal Reserve dollars, or their Federal Reserve dollars, I guess I should say, cannot keep up and is looking at contracting a German and a Swiss company to help with the production of paper.
Well, the Federal Reserve has not made a secret of that. They announced on page 1 of USA Today about 4 weeks ago that they're increasing the money supply, the currency, by 1/3 because they want to stave off panic from people who are going to be worried next year, 1999, about the Y2K problem, which beyond a shadow of a doubt is going to create a run on the banks. But we don't have a sound economy. We don't have a surplus. We have a $500 billion deficit, and all you got to do is call the Concord Coalition, hardly a conspiracy group, and they will give you the facts on how much you've got. Newsweek magazine also published a story on the fact that we do not have a surplus. If you count right, you'll know we have a major deficit. Well, I have 7 steps, and the first step is learn how to create wealth. Money is the currency of power. In the United States, 1% of the population controls 99% of the wealth. 99% of the population controls 10% of the wealth. Now, if money is the currency of power, and you have power because you have money, 99% of Americans cannot possibly live in a democracy. So the first thing Americans must do is to create a mechanism to get their money back under their own control. Not work until the middle of June to make the first dollar of the year, and you've given the rest of it to the government. The second thing is I have created a money system, a freedom, just like the dollar, backed.
And it's completely legal as long as it's not hard coin.
Completely legal. It's going to be backed by gold, and the IRS is not going to put me in jail because I'm going to put it together in a way where I am not responsible for the people who spend it. Therefore, I will sell the freedom, but if I give it away, if I sell it, then they want me to be accountable for it. So I'm figuring out a way where they can't put me in jail because I help people keep their money.
I personally see a growing militarization of our police. First of all, would you agree with that? And second of all, do you think it's related to this year 2000 computer problem?
I don't know if it is or not, but I know the mayor of New York has built building a $19 million bunker. I know that when the mayor came out and brought the police force out to watch the so-called Million Youth March organized by a very black, radical type man, that he at that point brought in a military unit called the New York Police with helicopters, tanks, mace, tactics that were psychologically constructed, and it was an experiment. You could see they were experimenting, and they did it in Harlem, so many white people didn't think it would have any effect on them, but they were really practicing up for the suburbs. And I'd like to say this for your white viewers, that the jails were not built for black men. They used the prejudice against black men to build jails for white people who, once they wake up to what's going on, say, the white population has no history of being tolerant. It's very intolerant with government abuse. The black community is a very tolerant community, and I think you're going to have a very different result when enough Timothy McVeighs join enough militias. And so, the bottom line is they're playing with fire. But they now are increasing the budgets of police units, which have become military units, at a time when crime is going down. So the plan is not to fight crime.
And terrorism is at a 25-year low across the world, and yet we're stepping up anti-terrorism legislation and anti-terrorism training and funding and things of that nature. It ties right in.
Flight 800 on TWA will crash, and they will say the terrorists did it, racket up so-called security at the airport. I was trying to travel from Philadelphia to Cincinnati when that happened, and I had to produce a federal piece of identification. I said, I'm not going to Yugoslavia. I just want to go to Cincinnati. And like I was in another country. Now when you go to the airport, what they do to you at the airport, we wouldn't have tolerated 20 or 30 years ago. No evidence of any terrorist activity.
It's incrementalism.
Incrementally, they are increasing this militarization of the American society, and they're increasing the power of the central government over the people of this country. This is not a black or white issue. And the point in my book that I make is that we didn't all come over on the same ship, but we're all in the same boat. And blacks and whites had better read Frederick Hegel and understand that we're being manipulated by Hegelian principles, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. And if we don't, see, every time a black person and a white person work together, I'm not into that integration silliness, busing and holding hands, but every time blacks and whites work together to accumulate mutual power as Americans, we take one step closer to freedom. Every time we fight one another over racism and racial differences, we move one step away from being a free people.
I agree. I was brought up raised, you have friends because you have something in common. And if you concentrate on what's different about each other, you'll never find anything in common to learn to get along.
Right.
And you're exactly right. When you have common goals, and I say Americans rather than Afro-American or Black American or White American, American is that key phrase there. If we all decide to be Americans, then we can do something about this. I appreciate your time.
I thank you,
sir. It
sir.
was a pleasure, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, sir.
And we'll call you later on
All right.
for Alex's show.